Hello, welcome to Biology EOC Review Lesson number 1. And in this particular lesson, I will be covering three standards, which is listed up here. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the cell theory. And the cell theory is we put this theory together after the contribution of these three different scientists, which you can see here, Theodor Schwann, Matthias Schleiden, and Rudolf Virchow. Based on their contribution, we say that cell theory, all living organisms are made up of cell. The cell is structural and functional unit of all living things. All cells come from pre-existing cells by division, which means the spontaneous generation does not occur, which means the cells never appear by itself like that. So it always new cells come from the pre-existing ones. These three bullets right here, which is added later, cells contain hereditary information, which is passed from cell to cell during cell division, which is referring to the DNA that in the chromosomes, which pass from one generation to another or one cell to another. All cells are basically the same in chemical composition. Cells pretty much made up of macromolecules, which you know that the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Chemically, they are same. The last one is all energy flow, which is metabolism and biochemistry of life occur within the cell, which is cells are pretty much the basic unit for the metabolism and biochemistry. So the next thing what we're going to talk about is the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. As you see here, there are two different types of cells. The first one is a prokaryote, which is pretty much a bacterial cell, and this is a typical diagram of an animal cell. And the main difference that you see here in prokaryotes, there is no clear nucleus. Instead, they have a nucleoid. And on the right side, you see in eukaryotes, you see a clear nucleus. And inside the nucleus, you see the nucleolus, and there is no nucleolus or anything right here. And this nucleus communicates to the cytoplasm through this tiny holes right here called the nuclear pore. And also it is precisely bounded by a nuclear membrane. And you can see that there is a cytoplasm right here, which is filled with the different organelles, and you don't see any of those right here, except one organelle, which is this brown dots right here called ribosomes. That's the only one that these two cells share. Also, the cell membrane, they do have the cell membrane in common. The ribosomes are responsible for making proteins. They protein synthesis from the command received from the DNA. And look at these organelles here. I'm going to quickly review what they are. And there's this organelle right here, which is lying close to the nucleus, is the endoplasmic reticulum. These tiny dots right here are the ribosomes. Sometimes ribosomes are scattered freely in the cytoplasm as well. And this endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for processing the proteins which ribosomes make and fold it and all that and send it out to the Golgi bodies right here. Golgi bodies are shipping and packaging of the any chemical that is coming from the endoplasmic reticulum. And also endoplasmic reticulum is considered to be the highway of the cell. That's through which these molecules move in and out, inside within the cell in different parts of the cell actually. So the Golgi bodies process these chemicals or the proteins coming from the endoplasmic reticulum and put it inside a vesicle, process it and ship it out of the cell. Some chemicals like enzymes or hormones or mucus or anything that come out of the cell which is processed by the Golgi. Another important organelle that you see here is the mitochondrion, which is the powerhouse of the cell. They generate ATP or the energy by burning the sugar from the food that we eat. Another organelle that you see here is the cytoskeleton. It's a part of the cytoskeleton called the centriole. It helps in cell division in animal cell. And right here, you see the chloroplast. Now you can see that since this cell contain a chloroplast, so this cell can be a plant cell. Even though I mentioned this is an animal cell before, and since it is a presence of the chloroplast, that makes the cell plant cell. It's right here, another one, and the animal cells do not have chloroplast, and I hope you can understand that. And so that is the typical structure of an eukaryotic cell. And now we're going to you can see the difference between plant cell and animal cell. We see everything what we explained just now You can see the nucleus, both have the nucleus. Look at the plant cell, they have a large central vacuole at the middle, and animal cells do not have pretty much any vacuoles here. And you can see the chloroplast in plant cell, and there is no chloroplast in animal cell. And they both have the mitochondria. Look at the cell wall. Plant cells have a rigid cell wall, and animal cells do not have the cell wall. And the nucleus is pushed to the side right here, and this is located in the middle of the cell. So those are pretty much the three basic main difference between the plant cell and animal cell. And we can say one more here, which is the centriole. This is the organelle that helps the cell in cell division, and which is not there in plant cell. So that's the difference between plant cell and animal cell. So now we're coming to the transport across the membrane. For that, I'm going to go back to the previous slide one more time. And the molecules go in and out of the cell because the cell must communicate with the surrounding. When the molecules go in and out of the cell, it must happen through the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane is highly selective. Not all the molecules can go in and out like that. So in the same way, the plant cell, the cell wall is pretty much any molecules can go through, but not the cell membrane. So for the cell membrane, transport or the move the molecules across the membrane, like you see here, these are the lipid molecule with the head and two tails. And these green structures here represents the proteins. And you can see the molecules are moving across the membrane in two different forms of transport. One is called active transport, another one is called passive transport. Active transport requires energy. You can see that ATP is used, and also the molecules are moving from low to high concentration. Sometimes these movement is through the pump mediated. That means these proteins act as a pump. It will pump the molecule from low to high concentration. It can be either uniport, which is through one port, or it can be co-transport. That means when one goes from this side to this side, another one goes from this side to this side. That is called they work together. Co means together. They are transporting together two molecules back and forth from inside and outside of the cell, or outside to inside. The another type of active transport is antiport, that you can see that here this happens through the carrier mediated, and there is a carrier protein here, right here. It's moved the molecules from low to high in two different directions. So this is always remember, active transport needs energy, and that is powered by the ATP. Now coming back here, the passive transport. In passive transport, there are two different types we can see here. One is simple diffusion. It's very easy. The molecules just move from high to low concentration. It just diffuses through this particular lipid bilayer. And look at this facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion never happens through the lipid bilayer. It must happens through the protein channel. So you can see that it happens through the channel mediated or carrier mediated. Channel mediated, it just diffuses through by itself. And the carrier mediated, there will be other molecules controlling the movement of the molecules from high to low. Now, the main difference between passive and active is passive is always from high to low, and active transport is always from low to high. That requires energy. Another important passive transport is osmosis, which is the movement of water. And you can see here in this beaker, there is a red line, dotted line represents the semi-permeable membrane, which is the cell membrane. Molecules are moving from, always remember, water move from high to low. But you see here, these dots represents the sugar molecule, and these tiny dots represents the water molecule. And you see what happens after some time. You can see that. All right, so what you see here is there is large amount of water molecule here. In other words, when you count the number of sugar molecule here, it's very less, and here it's a lot of sugar molecule here. And if you leave the system over time, and you can see that the water from this side move to this side. And what you understood from here is, water always move from its high concentration to low concentration. In other words, wherever you see less salt, the water move from there to wherever the cell see that there is a high salt solution. So based on the presence of salt, if both sides the salt is same, we call that isotonic. Water will move in and out of the cell. And you can see that if there is too much salt inside the cell, water will go into the cell and the cell can burst. And if there is too much salt outside, and the water will leave the cell and the cell will shrink. And this is the way water go in and out of the cell. And this doesn't happen just through the lipid bilayer, and there are some protein channels that controls the movement of water across the membrane. We call them aquaporins. And with that, I'm going to stop. And this is our review lesson one. And I hope you can take the quiz in the next assignment. Thank you very much.